Hey everybody, it's Jack here from Peach Guitars. Welcome to another live video. Today we're doing something that was a result of the Gibson live that we did last week. I threw a couple of acoustics in there and a lot of people seem to be very interested in us doing some live stuff with acoustic guitars, which kind of makes sense, I suppose. We wanted to go for these more kind of candid, low-key kind of approaches to the videos. Acoustic guitars make a lot of sense. So that's what we're going to do today, and we're going to start off this kind of process of incorporating acoustic guitars into these videos with probably the two biggest acoustic guitar brands, not only that we sell, but probably in the world right now. So, you know, we're starting in good form, starting as we mean to go on. What you'll have heard at the start there is this Martin, and the way this video is going to be structured is that I'm going to alternate between some Martin guitars and some Taylor guitars. So what I want to kind of achieve today is not only to show you some of the amazing guitars that we've got in stock from each of these brands, but to also kind of give you some of my thoughts as to why you legitimately should own at least one of each. I feel they give you very different things. They give you very different approaches that you can apply to playing acoustic guitar. And I want to kind of get that across. I think there's a lot of debate that people have about whether you're a Martin guy or a Taylor guy or Gibson or whatever brand it might be. You don't have to have an allegiance, unless you're being paid by a company, of course. But for most people, you don't have to have that allegiance. You can just kind of play what you feel you want to play, and each of these different brands will offer you something legitimately different. So that's what I want to get across today. I'm also going to structure this slightly differently. In the past, we've had some of our sales team kind of chiming in with comments as we go in the live chat. So if you guys have any questions, what I'm going to do instead is answer them all once I've played each guitar. So make sure that you stay on board with the live chat as we go. Also comment on this video after this is finished being a live video. We'll still try and reply to your comments. I'm going to try and answer all the questions as best I can in between playing each guitar. But the most important thing, of course, is that I'm just going to show you each guitar as we go through. And I've picked out some incredible examples from both brands here. As I started to collate the guitars for this video, it soon proved itself to be a bit of a mammoth task, because it wasn't just a case of, well, we're going to pick one from each brand or even two from each brand. There's so many legitimately fantastic guitars from Martin and Taylor, as you would expect, that I just felt I had to kind of throw in. There's about 9 guitars here that I want to talk about today. I'm not going to play all of them, but I will kind of give you an example of each, and I'll show you and talk you through the features of each guitar that I show you. So, with that being said, I've got a few of the specs here on my phone. So I'm going to be monitoring your questions and stuff that come in this way as well, so please feel free to chime in with comments as we go. Let me tell you about this guitar first of all. So this is an OM18E. This is kind of a special edition guitar, really, and this is something that we saw. I think these came in towards the end of last year, or maybe the start of this year, fairly recently anyway. The OM18 is a model that, as far as I'm aware, didn't exist in Martin's catalogue up to this point, because it's basically a mahogany-bodied OM model. So you've had triple O18s before, you've had D18s, the 18 referring to the combination of a spruce top with a mahogany body. Normally you would see OM guitars with rosewood backing sides, so the 21 series, the 28 series, up to 42 and 45s and stuff like that. But yeah, an OM18 kind of didn't really exist in many numbers anyway. And to top this guitar off, this was kind of designed to be the ultimate gigging package. So there's an LR Baggs Anthem pickup in this guitar. So it kind of ticks a lot of boxes for a lot of people. This is often the most requested acoustic body size, whether it's Martin's OM or Taylor's Grand Auditorium size that we're going to come on to in a bit. This is kind of the sweet spot for a lot of people, because it's small enough to be a comfortable fingerstyle guitar or a comfortable stay-at-home, sort of sit on a sofa kind of guitar. But it's also big enough to project and give you the volume that you need if you want to play it live or record with it. So it's kind of, as I say, in the sweet spot. I think the mahogany back and sides works really well with Martin guitars. Obviously everyone is familiar with D28, the sound of a D28 or an OM28. It's that rich, kind of slightly scooped out rosewood back and side sound, but I personally think the mahogany suits this style a little bit more. It pushes forwards the mids, which a guitar of this particular size, the OM body size, kind of benefits from, I think. So you've got the combination of all these specs that seem to work on this guitar. You've got the amazing LR Baggs pickup, and this guitar is currently priced at £1 under £2,000. So a very comfortable spot for most gigging musicians out there. Obviously that's a loose term right now because none of us are gigging, unfortunately, but once we're able to get back to it, this is the kind of instrument that's really going to serve you well. Maybe if it's your only acoustic guitar, if you're looking to purchase your first acoustic guitar, if you're an electric player predominantly, or if you just want something, if you've never had a Martin before, this is a great kind of introduction to the brand without having to spend a huge ton of money. I appreciate it's still a significant chunk, it's still a 4-figure sum, but for what this guitar is, I think this is great value. So I'm just going to play it one more time, and then I'm going to move on to one of the other guitars. I'm going to get onto the Taylors next. So we're going to alternate between the two so that it kind of hopefully keeps you guys interested. So anyway, let me show you some more tones with this OM18. So once again, you'll hear in this guitar, it's kind of happy doing any style you want to throw at it. Now, granted, I'm not primarily an acoustic player, so I'm sure there's players out there watching this that will get a lot more out of this kind of instrument than I'm going to be able to demonstrate to you, but you'll hear that from fingerstyle all the way to kind of fairly heavy strumming, this guitar can handle anything. And obviously, the more it wears in over time, the more it's just going to open up. There's so many things I can talk about with acoustic guitars, which I'm going to try and avoid going off on too many tangents today about the wonderful world of acoustic guitars and why, you know, they're just perfect for every player out there. So I'm going to avoid doing that too much. Just want to show you a few of these guitars. Somebody just asked a recap on this guitar, what the price is. This is £1,999 at the moment. If you check the link in the live chat, you'll be able to check out the listings for all these guitars. You'll be able to get the pricing information on all of them. You'll also be able to get the listing videos there that we do. So all these guitars have been recorded in kind of full high quality stereo room mics and all that stuff. So if you want to hear more detailed tonal examples of what they sound like, please check out the listings. Today I'm just recording this on the vocal mic just to try and give you an idea of what it sounds like as my voice does in the room. So that's kind of, you know, a vague example, but check out the web listings that are going to be linked in the live chat for all the info on these guitars. I've talked enough about this, so let me move on to something from Taylor. I'm going to try not to talk too much while I'm putting these guitars, picking them up and putting them down, because I will hit something and I don't want to do that. So, okay, now I can speak. Alright, so Taylor guitars. Again, this isn't going to be too much of a brand history on each brand, because I'm sure most people out there watching will be aware of the kind of heritage of each brand. Obviously, Martin has decades and decades and decades of guitar building experience, of heritage guitar models. Pretty much everyone will be familiar with, if not by name, certainly the sound of a Martin guitar on record or in live performance. You know, they're iconic. Taylor have had to work a little bit harder to amass the kind of following that they have, because they're a relatively new company, they're a new brand, and all the ideas that they've put into their guitars since their initiation have been really quite revolutionary. They've accelerated very quickly in their kind of understanding of guitar building, guitar making, to the point now where they're just making unbelievable instruments, largely with master luthier Andy Powers at the helm. He's kind of the guy that's spearheading them in a more modern direction. But they've still got a lot of vintage sensibilities. They know what players want, they know what players are familiar with from instruments like Martins and Gibsons. So to me, they're kind of the happy medium between having a really comfortable, kind of modern feeling guitar, and also something that sounds appropriately vintage if you need it to. So that sounds like a little bit of a paradox, but Taylor actually achieve it, and in a number of different ways. So you can get different variations basically on the same theme of that kind of hybrid vintage and modern thing. That's what I really like about them. And I've kind of shot myself in the foot a little bit with this video today, because I have recently bought a Taylor that I adore, but whenever you play a Martin, it always kind of puts you in a different mind frame, and you immediately find yourself wanting to have at least one of each, like I said. So hopefully what you're going to get from this video is very much that impression that they're both wonderful guitar making brands. They both offer you something different. So with that said, let me show you what a good Taylor can do. This guitar is a 414 CE limited edition Western Cedar Top V-Class guitar. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the spec after I've played it for you. So let me just pull up the spec sheet for this guitar so I can tell you a little bit more about it. So as I said, this is a 414, which is definitely among the very top ranks of Taylor's guitar production over recent years. Loads of people gravitate to this model for a number of different reasons. So typically the 400 series or the 4 series, the 3 series is where you start with Taylor's American-made guitars. So that's kind of a good entry point for people. But the 4 series kind of just jumps up a couple of notches. So you get an oven coil back and side wood combination on this guitar, which is unique to a lot of other guitar makers out there. That's not a typical wood pairing that people often use. I think it's got a little bit of a different tonal property. It's a little bit more polite in the mid-range. It has some of the same characteristics as Koa does, I think, and you're going to hear a Koa wood Taylor a little bit later in this video, so you can judge for yourself how closely you think it compares. This guitar, though, is a limited edition with, where would you normally have a Sitka spruce top, this guitar has a Western cedar top. So it's a little bit mellower. I think it takes some of that sheen away that you get with the Sitka spruce top. It suits fingerstyle a little bit more, so I'll show you a tiny bit more of that before we go on to the next guitar. Yeah, the V-Class bracing, though, is something that I'm going to talk a fair bit about in this video today. Not just on this guitar, but all 3 of the Taylors I'm going to play for you have the V-Class bracing system. It's an incredibly revolutionary system. I absolutely adore it. I think it's one of the best advancements ever to be made to acoustic guitar development. It's no small thing, and I have talked in other videos about this before, so forgive me if I'm going to be repeating myself, but for anyone who isn't aware what this is, Andy Powers has basically thrown everything away about X-bracing that builders were using for years and years. He's applied a V-shaped bracing pattern on this guitar, and the benefits to that are kind of 3 or 4-fold, I would say. You get way more output, so the guitar is a lot louder. You'll probably notice it was considerably louder than that Martin when I was laying into it with strumming. But also more dynamic. I think it's not just a loud guitar. You can be played softly and the notes still ring out really clearly. That's the other thing that Andy Powers wanted to implement with this new bracing technology, is that every note rings out with the same kind of intensity. So all the way from low ringing notes to high notes, which often can be muted on an acoustic guitar compared to lower notes. You don't have any of that on this guitar. So let me give you a quick example of that. If I play some low notes all the way up to the high, you'll hear just how balanced they are. The other thing you get is amazing intonation. So you'll have heard, as I was playing in the first example, you can voice chords like this. Loads of really little nice triplets and stuff that on most acoustic guitars you'd be fairly, you'd be very brave to go for them. You'd have to kind of have self-intonating fingers, but with these guitars they just do it for you. So yeah, those are just a few benefits to the V-Class. I absolutely love it, as I said. I'm not going to talk too much about it right now, because I think it applies more to the other Taylors I'm going to come onto. But this guitar is a kind of really satisfying midpoint. It kind of sits where that OM18 I showed you sits. So this guitar is priced just over £2,000. But the 4 Series is like a really satisfying point in Taylor's guitar range. If you're looking for something as a player where you're not too fussed about the ornamentation of guitars from the 800 series and upwards, again, guitars that you're going to see later on, this kind of fits, it ticks a lot of the Martin boxes actually, because Martin guitars have always been popular with players in the 21 and 28 series because they're relatively plain looking, so you're not paying for kind of fancy bindings and materials that you're not fussed about as a player if that's your primary interest. But it's still made with the exact same level of attention to detail in the craft of the guitar, so it sounds just as good as those more expensive counterparts. So this is kind of the sweet spot, and that's why I wanted to start with these two guitars. I think they fare quite closely to one another. The cedar top on this adds something a little bit special as well. I think it mellows it out, like I said. Obviously it has a nice aesthetic value as well. So it just depends what you like. But these two that I've shown you so far, it's kind of the bread and butter guitars. And what we're going to delve into from now on are what I would consider to be slightly more specialist models. Now, the guitar I'm going to show you next is by no means a specialist guitar, but let me explain my thoughts on it when I get to it. So, I'm going to get rid of that. And we're going to go to what is arguably, despite what I just said, the most iconic, most popular, most highly regarded, most highly sought after, most imitated, probably most recorded, most requested acoustic guitar of all time. This is the D28, and I gave it a massive introduction there for very good reason. You will definitely have heard a D28 on recordings. You'll have definitely seen a D28 in someone else's hands in a live situation. You'll probably definitely have played a guitar that, if it wasn't a D28, it was certainly inspired by a D28. This is basically Martin's flagship guitar. It has been for, I think, a million years now. It's just been around forever. This guitar, though, is the reimagined version. So a couple of years ago, Martin wanted to update some of the specs on these guitars. So they addressed certain things with the bracing patterns, the neck profile. I'm just going to call up the spec sheet on this reimagined guitar. So this has got a high performance tapered neck now. So this is kind of one of the big changes they made in the reimagined series. And it just makes it a little bit more accessible again for players. I guess Martin is kind of, even though they've been paving the way for decades, they're trying to play catch up a little bit to the new kids on the block like Taylor, where they're just so playable. If you're an electric player, sometimes jumping to an acoustic is quite a mammoth task, and you have to treat them as very different instruments. That's not so much the case now with the reimagined series. They're more comfortable than they ever were, and I think that the changes they've made to the bracing patterns, I think it's now scalloped bracing, forward shifted as well. I have to double check that, but I'm going to play it for you and you can be the judge. This is what a good D28 should sound like. So for a lot of people, the D28 is kind of the ultimate strummer's guitar. It also finds favour with a lot of fingerstyle players as well. So kind of try to give you a little bit of a mix of both there, but to me it's a great strumming guitar. So let me give you a quick example of that once again. most satisfying guitars to play an open E chord on, and that's kind of the appeal to most people. Sometimes you have to distill it down to basics like that. Now, the reason I termed the rest of these guitars kind of a little bit more specialist, and I include that under that umbrella, is that once you've played, I'm talking about this from my own perspective, so as a primarily electric player, once you've played a guitar like an OM, or you've played a grand auditorium, everything else kind of feels a little bit more like you're shifting towards that alien camp of it being a different instrument to the electrics that you know. Now, as versatile a guitar as this is, I do think that improvements over time have been made to such an extent that this isn't the benchmark acoustic for a lot of players anymore. Nowadays, you're looking at players that are gigging with these guitars, they want to record with them, and they want something that's comfortable in a different array of situations, like I said earlier, about being able to play at home comfortably or play on a stage. And if you're mainly an electric player, or maybe if you just don't play guitar that much, you don't want to pick something up that's going to intimidate you. A D28, you have to work a little bit harder. Because it's the bigger body size, the Dreadnought body size, you do have to kind of force your way into it a little bit, and it takes a little bit more energy to get the same level of dynamic output that you would do out of a smaller body guitar. So while this would still be the benchmark for a lot of people, I do think that the times have changed a little bit. So I just want to kind of, that's only my own interpretation of these guitars. The D28 is still an incredible go-anywhere, catch-all kind of instrument, as you'll have heard. But there's a lot of competition now from these slightly smaller bodied instruments. So, the Dreadnoughts kind of need to work a little bit harder. That's exactly what this reimagined version of this guitar does. So again, this is in the same kind of price bracket as the first two guitars I talked about. It's a little bit more expensive, being a 28 series guitar. Some of those spec changes that I talked about earlier with the bracing obviously go towards that. The high performance tapered neck reflects in the cost as well. It's a super, super comfortable neck. More so, I would say, than D28s and Martin Dreadnoughts of old. I think these are a lot more comfortable to play, all of these reimagined guitars. Other than that, it's fairly standard form. For anyone who doesn't know, this is a Sitka spruce top, which has actually been, I don't know if this has got Martin's VTS tone system on this, but it's certainly aged to a certain degree, so you kind of get a little bit more of that vintage tone quality out of the box, and it aids the aesthetic as well. I think they look gorgeous. It is kind of more honey glazed finish, and then this is rosewood back and side, East Indian rosewood back and side. So fairly standard form for most people who know about Martin. This is one of the pillars of their guitar output, but it's always worth being reminded of that and seeing how it stacks up to some of the other guitars. So I think that's kind of covered that. I did say that in between each guitar I would be answering questions. So let me do that now quickly. Let me see what people have been saying. Thank you to everyone, as always, for watching our lives. It's really appreciated massively. This is a lot of fun to do, and certainly at the moment we all need a lot of fun. So let me see what people are saying. So someone asking, for a comparison with a J45. That's a very interesting question. The J45's got a different wood combination, so you've got mahogany-bodied guitar there in the form of the J45. So it's more of a direct comparison to a D18 Martin. I'm not going to get into kind of Gibson guitars today, because this is specifically about Martin and Taylor's, but those two do stack up very well. Same chap has mentioned just about the number of songs that D28s have been used on, and there's a few Beatles references there in the comments. Blackbird, Dear Prudence, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just one of those guitars that you will know just from hearing it. Yeah, keep the questions and the comments coming in, guys, because that's what a live is for, right? I want to interact with you guys. But in the meantime, I'm going to show you something else that kind of represents the opposite end of the scale to what I just showed you with that D28. This is kind of the cutting edge of Taylor's acoustic guitar building technologies. Saw this guitar earlier in the year at the NAMM show. We got to sit down with Andy Powers and talk to him about some of these new guitars that he's been putting out under the Builder's Edition moniker. So for anyone who doesn't know what that is, Andy Powers, the guy I've mentioned, is the kind of the master luthier, master builder at Taylor Guitars. and he is responsible for a lot of the advancements that they've made in recent years and pushing them in a more kind of contemporary direction, not necessarily tonally, but by using modern technologies to make these kind of tones that we're all looking for even more accessible to players. That's kind of how I think of it. This is one of the latest additions to his efforts. So this is a K26 Builder's Edition, CE Builder's Edition. They've always been, CEs have kind of always been the bread and butter for Taylor. CE meaning cutaway and electronics. So these guitars, all the guitars I've shown you and I'm going to show you today are all CEs. They've all got cutaways and they've all got Taylor's ES2 pickup system up here. This guitar though is a little bit different, and this is something that Andy has decided to implement on only 2 guitars in their range so far, the 816 and this, which is the K26. Now I was going to show you the 816 today, but as luck would have it, this guitar turned up this morning, and this is kind of the more arguably impressive guitar that I wanted to show you. So it's gorgeous flamey Koa back and sides and top as well. So that alone kind of puts this in the upper echelons of Taylor's guitar making prowess. It's an absolutely stunning guitar. Koa, as I said earlier, has got some really, really nice tonal properties. The oven call that I talked about on the 414 earlier, I think it sits in a similar kind of frequency spectrum as Koa, but Koa obviously is the more premium option. It's going to have more bandwidth to the tone. It's going to be a little bit more dynamic. And it's gorgeous as well. So it's kind of got it all going for it. It's the Brad Pitt of tone woods. But this guitar has a new feature, which is this, which I don't know if you're going to be able to see very clearly on the one camera we've got here, but this sound port cutaway. So this guitar's basically grown an extra hole, and there's a few benefits to that Andy Powers has talked about. Obviously, it's. I'm going to play it for you, and then I'm going to talk about it. So you can hear Koa doing its thing very nicely there. It's really balanced. It doesn't have the same kind of mid-range projection that Mahogany has. It also has a different mid-range character to Rosewood. I think it's just a really nice sounding wood combination. As Russell Lee has just commented, It sounds great for fingerstyle, and also this sound port cutaway, that's kind of its biggest strength, I think, is that single note lines sound a little bit bigger, the notes sound a little bit more round. With chords, obviously, it does add something to the tone as well, and as you'll have heard when I'm really kind of giving it some big open chords, this is dad-gad tuning, by the way, to kind of accentuate this fact. It's just huge, it's got a huge dynamic range, but if I play some single note stuff now, with a pick, it's one of those things that's going to be difficult to experience as a player maybe, but on the other side of this, hopefully this mic is doing it justice. I do think it adds a lot more depth in the room to the single note lines. It's like having a little bit of an onboard compressor in a way, because everything opens up and everything's got a little bit more life to each note. But at the same time, it doesn't cloud the issue when you want to play big complex chords. A lot of that has to do with the V-class bracing that I talked about earlier as well. Everything stands out in its own way, and you can play some really complex stuff. Dad-gad tuning, I've got to remember what I'm doing. Interesting stuff happened there. I was trying to find some sort of interesting inversions and things just to show you how every note handles itself really, really well. I think you get the idea. MJ asked, can you get a wah-like effect by covering the sound hole? No. No, because the primary tone is coming from the main sound hole. I think this second sound hole just kind of acts as a little bit, it's like a tweeter in a way, a mid-range tweeter on a high-end speaker. It just kind of has this real nice projection in certain frequencies, and I think that's what Andy Powers wanted it to do. It's not a radically different experience to playing a Taylor guitar without this system, but I think it just adds something. And if you're a fingerstyle player, you're obviously going to benefit not just from that, but the slightly oversized body. So this is the Grand Symphony body style, the 6 in the name denoting that, so it's the K26. I think this is kind of a happy marriage of all things. There's also the 816 that I talked about, which has got a Sitka spruce top and rosewood back and sides. A little bit more of a kind of flat sonic signature that way, I think. The Koa lends itself more to that kind of slightly mellower, slightly more scooped fingerstyle thing. But they're both beautiful guitars. This is the one I wanted to show you too, though. So, kind of, this is the pinnacle of Taylor's guitar building right now. I think these guitars are going to be quite limited, but we should see this technology hopefully starting to filter down to some of the lower series of guitars at some point, but they're not going to be as beautiful as this. So that's kind of the case made for this guitar. I think it's gorgeous. Okay, let me move on to a Martin now. And before I get to playing it, I'm just going to address some more questions that I've seen about that. A lot of questions about that Taylor. The fact, someone said it's almost got an amplified sound, doesn't sound mic'd. That's kind of testament to how good that guitar, how well it's constructed, is that it envelops you. I think a lot of these guitars do that, and hopefully they're all going to be put across in the same way. When you play a high-end acoustic guitar like this, once you vibe with it, of course, because each of these guitars aren't going to be for every player out there. As I said, we're moving into a slightly more specialist realm now, but once you find something that vibes with you, it completely envelops you while you play it. So hopefully that kind of translates to what the audience is going to hear as well, which, based on some of these comments, I think is the case. With a word on Taylor's naming system, because somebody asked about kind of what do the numbers mean. In most of their guitars, I'll talk a little bit more about this when I get on to the next Taylor guitar I'm going to show you, but it basically just refers to the body size, the top wood that's used, and the series. I did that in the wrong order. The series of the guitar, the top wood that's used, and then the body size. That's what the three numbers signify. And then there's usually something after it, like CE, to denote cutaway and electronics. So once you understand the system, it's fairly easy to comprehend. Same kind of thing that Martin do with their guitars, specifically this one, which is a 00028, but this falls into a relatively new family of products for Martin. This is the modern Deluxe range. So similar to what they did with the Reimagined series, they kind of just tuned these up a little bit hotter. They've kind of tried to incorporate more modern features into this guitar, and they've kind of changed pretty much every component on it. It's still got the same genetic makeup in terms of the wood combination, but it's got advanced bracing patterns on this guitar. It's got the VTS top that I talked about earlier, so this is heat treated to remove the moisture from the wood, so it basically ages the guitar massively straight off the factory line. And I think you're going to hear that when I play the guitar. There's a Dreadnought version of this guitar as well, which it would be interesting to hear it stacked up against the D28 Reimagined. Maybe that's a video for another day. But I wanted to show you a 000 guitar in this lineup. So 000 again is kind of the midpoint. It's the same body size as the OM that I showed you first of all in this video, but the main difference is in the scale length of this guitar. The OM has a slightly extended scale length, same as a Dreadnought. The 000 has a slightly shorter scale length, and that kind of reflects in the tone. I think the mid-range is a little bit stronger on a 000. It's a little bit more suited maybe to strumming because it's a little bit more forgiving in the same way that a J45 would be from Gibson. These are all just my own personal interpretations of the body sizes, but a couple of other performance upgrades on this guitar. You've got a two-way titanium truss rod. You've got liquid metal bridge pins, which sounds interesting. And then you've got gold frets. So all these things that I just talked about basically add a lot more volume to the guitar. I think the bridge pins, they quote as adding something ridiculous like 6 or 7 or 8 dB to these guitars over the regular bridge pins that they use. The titanium truss rod is obviously a lot more stable than a regular truss rod. So these guitars are going to travel very well in different climates. They're going to acclimatize a lot more easily than I would say a regular truss rod would do. And the gold frets is kind of a happy medium between the tone of nickel frets and stainless steel. So it's a little bit more high-end content that you get out of these, but without going all the way to stainless steel. So it's happy medium, but as is reflected in the name, Modern Deluxe. So with that said, let me show you how it sounds. So I wanted to put across with this guitar not only the output that it has, and the first chord I played on it really emphasised that fact. It's got loads of output, and I don't think obviously it's just down to different bridge pins. There's different technologies going on here. Go to peachguitars.com, check out the link in the live chat to find out more spec on this guitar, because as I said, I'm convinced there's some bracing differences on this guitar too. That's number one, but I also wanted to show you what the slightly shorter scale length kind of benefits you, and that is in ease of bending. So you find players like Clapton have often gravitated to triple O models because of the ease of bending. I think these guitars come with 13s as stock, but it's a lot more comfortable to do that on this guitar than it would have been on that D28, for example. And tonally, as I said, the mid-range sits in a different place, and it kind of suits that kind of... suits that kind of thing. It's a very versatile guitar still, but if you want a little bit more of a fingerstyle friendly instrument, I think that a triple O is a great way to go, and this modern deluxe version of this guitar adds a few kind of premium features, as I said, that are really going to benefit pretty much any player. I think it doesn't sound quite as mellow as the regular model would do, but I think these performance upgrades kind of add to what a lot of players are looking for out of their acoustic, which is clarity and output. And that's kind of all that needs to be said. Check out the web link for this guitar if you want to find out more about it, and also check out the full high def audio that we've filmed and recorded for it already, because that will really come across a little bit more strongly the benefits and the strong points of this guitar. That's all I have to say about that. So let me jump back to Taylor, and this is going to be the final Taylor that I'm going to play for you. And it's one of my very favourites. This is another Builder's Edition guitar. Actually, before I do this, let me just address a couple of things. Steve Burrows, thank you for watching, as always. Thank you for commenting. That wasn't Dad Gad, by the way, that was just a drop D. But hopefully that might be your way of saying about how much depth that guitar's got. It sounds like it's tuned lower. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but yeah, I appreciate the comment anyway. And yeah, great blues tone, MJ, as you pointed out from that guitar. As I said, it's kind of associated with some of those players historically that have gravitated towards triple O's for that reason. So very versatile guitar, but very well versed in kind of blues styles, finger picking styles. It's a great country guitar as well. Anyway, enough said about that. This guitar from Taylor, this is a 912 CE, and this is Wild Honeyburst finish, which isn't something you see very often at all. It's absolutely gorgeous, this guitar. I think this is one of the best looking acoustic guitars I've ever seen. It's actually a Lutz spruce top as opposed to Sitka spruce on this guitar. I think that's a little bit mellower, again, compared to Sitka spruce. Rosewood back and sides. Some of the advantages of the 9 series in Taylor's lineup is the contouring that you get. So you get the gorgeous beveled armrest, and you get some other body contouring around the high end of the neck as well, for access to the higher frets. So the 9 series, before you get to the presentation series and stuff like that, it's basically as high as you can go with Taylor. It's them throwing everything that they know, everything that they've learned, and all the ornamentation that goes along with it as well. So you've got like mother of pearl, pink abalone inlays on this guitar. You've got the Koa fretboard, in fact. So a little bit of an unusual wood combination. Again, the Builder's Edition guitars are kind of like Andy Power's playground, where he can just try out these new ideas that he's had. So using Koa as a fretboard material is not something you see very often. It's going to have a unique kind of tonal quality. Same ES2 system as in all Taylor guitars, so you know what you're going to get with that. It's a great pickup system. The V-class bracing, and I will talk a little bit more about that as we go with this guitar, being the last one. But with the Builder's Edition, what Andy Powers decided to do was to actually implement this new silent satin finish. So this is something that he's been trying to do in a few different iterations of the Builder's Edition guitars. And it basically means that not only does it look really cool to have a satin finish guitar, I think it makes them look a little bit more vintage in a specific kind of way, but it also means that you don't get any of that annoying glossy squeak when you're, I think that's the reason he developed it, in fact, was just as a studio player, you don't have, when you're moving your arms in the studio, you don't have that squeak to contend with. That's not going to affect everybody. The massive benefit to his decision to do that, there's many benefits. So let me play a bit for you, and then I'm going to talk about some more of my thoughts on this guitar, because I love this thing. Now, that's not the kind of tone that you would necessarily expect from this body size. This is a 912, so as I explained earlier, that means it's a 900 series guitar. The 1 denotes that it's got a spruce top, and the 2 denotes that it's a grand concert body size, which I guess is equivalent to a Martin O model, or maybe a double O, probably a double O in fact. So much smaller body than most acoustic guitars. The Grand Concert's always been one of my favourites because of the kind of intimacy that it affords you. But this guitar, being a builder's edition with the V-class bracing, expands it well beyond the realms that you would previously have associated with a Grand Concert model. Not only will it now serve the same kind of intimacy level that you would get out of a regular Grand Concert guitar, but now it's kind of been accelerated, been hot-rodded if you like, so you can get way more volume out of this. You can use this as a legitimate strummer. Sounds great for that. The smaller body kind of tightens up the mid-range, makes it way more focused. So, you know, if you were to hear this directly after hearing a D28, it's got a very different sonic signature. But I think it kind of covers a lot of ground. Now, arguably, the Grand Auditorium model is the more flexible model available, being a little bit of a bigger body size, but there's no substitute, I think, for having this body size to just be able to sit back on a sofa and just play. It kind of draws things out of you, and it's a way more inviting guitar than a Dreadnought might be in terms of its comfort factor, particularly if you're a fairly small person like I am. Does a bit of everything. As I wanted to point out again with the V-Class stuff, you have no fear of where to go on this guitar. You can utilise that gorgeous carved out cutaway to massive extent. You can play way up on the fingerboard and then you know it's going to be in tune. There we go. So, gorgeous guitar. This builder's edition kind of delineation, this kind of program that Andy Powers is instilling on his guitars, I just think is absolutely fantastic. There's a number of guitars in this range. So there's the K26 that I talked about earlier. There's also, goodness me, there was some really interesting 12-string guitars as well, utilising the grand concert body format. So I think Andy Powers is very favourable towards this body size, because it can just do so much, and he's kind of trying to challenge people's perceptions a little bit with guitars like this. And the 12-string version, using a smaller body, you could still get some amazing tones. So that's that. That's all the Taylors I'm going to talk about for today. I'm going to show you a couple a little bit later on, but it's all the Taylors I'm going to play for today. Let me grab the last guitar I'm going to play for you, which is going to be from the other side of the fence. I noticed quite a few people were saying that that was their favourite one so far, so please feel free to chime in. Let me know what your favourite guitar's been so far. I think for a lot of people it's going to be that, and I think I'll be inclined to agree. Excuse me there. Now, I did say that that guitar maybe is more suited to smaller people such as myself, but I have an absolute behemoth of a man behind the camera today, Luke Chidgey. What did you think of that guitar? The Grand Concert?
I'm a fan of the Grand Concert, yeah.
Luke is a fan.
Particularly that one.
And he's enormous, so it's going to work for anybody. I didn't want to kind of pigeonhole that guitar. I realised I did that part way through. Yes, Richard Malloy, the intonation is spot on that Taylor. I think that's just down to the V-Class. They just do amazing stuff with that bracing pattern. A few more questions coming in. Keep them coming in, guys, because we're going to be wrapping this video up soon. I want to answer as many of your questions as I can. Do we have the 816 CE Builder's Edition? We do indeed. That guitar was going to be in the running for this video today, but the Koa version, the K26, turned up just in the nick of time, and I decided to include that one instead. But the 816 CE is here, and it's an amazing guitar as well. So rewind this video once the live's finished. Check out the K26. I think there's a listing on the website for the 816 as well, so make sure you check out peachguitars.com. You can find out all the info you want to know about that guitar as well as the K26. There we go. So let me talk about the last guitar that we got in the lineup for today. And this one is a little bit of a left field option. It's a little bit different to everything else I've talked about, which has been fairly standard form. This guitar is actually from Martin's Custom Shop. So, what sets this apart, this is an OM model. This is a limited edition guitar with a Sitka top, but this guitar is actually utilising what they're terming sinker mahogany for the back and sides. So, the gist of sinker mahogany. This is wood that was felled roughly 300 years ago before being floated downstream with the intention of building vast ships, I'm told. So that's some interesting trivia for you. Basically, it's really, really, really old wood that's been living at the bottom of rivers and lakes for hundreds of years. They've obviously managed to get hold of this stuff. I think this is a trend that a few brands have been taking on. It's not just Martin that are doing this. But I guess the idea is that wood that old, once it's dried out, has so much more richness and openness to it. The wood's been dead for a long, long time. So it's got a way more kind of open tonal characteristic, and I'm just going to show you what it sounds like before I talk any more about this guitar. So let's see what it sounds like. So this sounds like what a great OM should sound like, I think. With mahogany, obviously, you're kind of comparing this a little bit to the guitar that we started with, the OM18. But there's some more premium appointments on this guitar, being a custom shop edition. You've got a Sitka spruce top on this guitar. The Sitka mahogany is also used on the neck. So there's kind of a different hue to it as well. I don't know how well this is going to translate to the camera, but check out the images on the website for these guitars. I do think there's something in the tone, and it's quite hard to put your finger on what it is maybe, but there's certainly a depth to it that you don't get out of a brand new out-of-the-box guitar. And that's not to say that it's better or worse, but I think it offers you something legitimately different. Black ebony fingerboard on this guitar. This is a modified low oval shape neck. So fairly flat, very, very comfortable. Kind of similar to the modern Deluxe. It feels a little bit like that. Martin have really kind of upped their game with neck shapes recently. It's not like guitars. You play some old guitars sometimes, and the necks are enormous, or they feel like they're kind of uneven, shall we say. You don't have any of that with Martin's guitars anymore whatsoever. They're super comfortable to play. And being a custom shop edition, I don't know how well you're going to see this in the sound hole. It's been signed by Chris Martin IV, the current reigning monarch of Martin guitars. Wonderful chap. He's hand signed this guitar. Hopefully you can see that. I don't know if you can see that. You can see that. Okay. Anyway, check out the more detailed images and stuff on the website. You'll also be able to hear this guitar in higher quality audio as well on our listing video. I just want to kind of give you a brief overview of each guitar today, and hopefully I've done that. So that's all the playing I'm going to do for you today. I'm just going to quickly show you a couple of other guitars just to make this a more fair and balanced thing. I've shown you 4 Martins and only played 3 Taylors for you so far, so there's a couple more Taylors coming your way. Again, just stuff that's come in today. We had a Taylor shipment today which included that K26, tons of GS Minis and 200 series guitars, loads of new guitars from Taylor, which is fantastic. But I had to show you this because this is one of the most striking versions of the GS Mini Koa edition. GS Mini is one of the most popular acoustic guitars that we've ever had the privilege of selling. Loads of people love these guitars. They kind of fill several different spots in many different guitar players' arsenals. And if you're looking for something that's visually striking, I think this is about as visually striking as it gets. I've just never seen another GS Mini Koa that looks like that, with the cool mirroring on each side. It's a really well matched set of Koa on this guitar. GS Minis, you know, most people will know what they sound like, what they're good for. Check out the listing videos that we've done if you want to hear them in action. I just had to show you that. Awesome, awesome guitar. And lastly, another quick word on Taylor. This is a proper presentation. This is the new 200 series, which I just wanted to show you quickly, because for a lot of people, jumping up to an American-made Taylor guitar is quite a big deal. You know, like the 300 series is where that starts. The 200 series are not made in America, but they're exemplary guitars. They're absolutely fantastic instruments, and Taylor have always tried to make really drastic improvements to the 100 and the 200 series to make them kind of way, way better value than a lot of other guitars out on the market. This guitar sits around the £1,000 price point, and the quality and the stuff that they've upped in this guitar, I'm going to leave all the spec to the website. So if you're going to find out about this guitar, go to the website. I'm sure you'll be very impressed with the spec that you get. But just know that this is an incredible quality instrument for the money. Not just for the money, in fact, it is an incredible quality instrument, and it definitely competes with some more premium offerings. I doubt this is in tune. It's not in tune. There's going to be a listing video coming soon, but I just wanted to make you all aware that there's a new 200 series. This is actually a 214 CE Plus, and it's all gloss finish, really comfortable neck profile, and it comes with this new revision to the gig bag as well. This is the Aero gig bag, so real kind of premium hard case. It's not a hard shell case, but it is a hard padded gig bag for these guitars. So I kind of tried to cover a little bit of everything there. You know, you've seen some Builder's Edition guitars, you've seen some 200 series guitars now. So yeah, just wanted to make it fair for everyone. There's a lot of new exciting Taylor stuff that's coming. And there's a lot of new Martin stuff as well. We always keep stocked across the board. I also wanted to tell you, very excitingly, that if you purchase a Taylor of anything above the 3 series, so any of the American-made guitars, you actually get 2 guitars for 1 because you're going to get a free baby Taylor with it. So that's kind of going to fulfill anything you could need an acoustic guitar for to gig with, and then you've got a fun, really cool guitar to play with at home as well. So that's a deal that's kind of running indefinitely, I believe. So make sure you check out the website to find out more information about that. But yeah, you get free baby Taylor with any guitars from the 300 series and above. Okay, so just a quick conclusion, because we've played a lot of guitars and talked about a lot of guitars. All these guitars are going to be collated in newsletter that we put out. So make sure that you subscribed to that. You're going to get all the information about these guitars. You can check out the web listings. You can check out high resolution photos, get pricing information and all that stuff, as well as find out all the other stuff that we've been up to throughout the course of the week. So the newsletter is the place for that. Make sure that you subscribed to that as well as the YouTube channel. So before I sign off, I said at the start of this video, I kind of wanted to make the case for the legitimate argument to own both Taylor and a Martin. Hopefully I've done that. I think with Martins what you get is the implication of all that massive heritage that they've got. And whatever model you choose, whether it's from the more modern school of thinking like the modern Deluxe guitars or those gorgeous custom shop sinker guitars, they've got their level of craftsmanship all the way through. They've got their level of heritage all the way through. You know exactly what you're going to get with a Martin guitar. You get all that kind of knowledge that they've amassed over this time. And to most people, Martin is still the benchmark. It's still the guitar that you refer to. And if you are an electric player looking for your first acoustic guitar, Martin is naturally the place that you're going to start looking. So the good thing to know is that in 2020, the lineup is stronger than it's ever been before. There's something for everybody. With Taylor, there's something for everyone as well, but they're doing things in their own way. I think tonally speaking, these guitars are a little bit more accessible and playable to a wider cross-section of people. I personally I love Taylor guitars. I love what they're about. I love Martins too, but I just find them so easy to play, speaking as primarily an electric player. Tonally, they sit in a very different spot to what a Martin would do. I think they've got a lot more open top end. With the V-Class stuff, the sky's the limit really, because who knows what Andy Powers is going to come out with next. I almost said Andy Timmons then. Don't know why that was on my mind. Andy Powers is just masterminding all these incredible new technologies in guitar design. He's doing an amazing job. So it's 2 very different schools of thought. You've got classic, you've got contemporary. What's interesting is that there's actually been quite a lot of crossover lately. So Martin this year announced their new, I can't remember the model of the guitar, but basically their new take on an acoustic electric hybrid. A new body style came out for them this year, which is the first time in decades that they've done that. Martin are trying to push forward a little bit more into this contemporary way of thinking, but obviously they're carrying their heritage and their knowledge with them. So that's going to be really interesting to see what you players think of that. Taylor are also applying their modern knowledge, but trying to move backwards. So we've seen in recent years the introduction of the Grand Pacific design, which is their take on a slope shoulder dreadnought. I didn't have one here today to show you, but those guitars sound fantastic as well. They offer all of the V-Class technology and stuff like that make Taylors so playable and so kind of welcoming to new players and experienced players alike. But that guitar, the Grand Pacific model, reaches back to a kind of more vintage tone point. So there's literally something for everything, for everyone from every brand. But I could definitely see cause to play both a Grand Auditorium Taylor and a Dreadnought Martin, or an OM Martin and something like the K26 with the nice bigger body style. You know, there's definitely reason to have one of each. Doesn't matter what the price point is, because the brand identity remains pretty much the same throughout. There's literally something for everyone. I've said that a lot, but make sure that you check out the website to find something that suits you, and hopefully this video has helped you understand that maybe there's something to be said for both brands. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much as always for watching. I really appreciate it. Do us a favour, Share this video when it's done, because we want more people to become involved with these live videos. I love having the interaction with you guys on the comments. So make sure that we keep this nice and healthy by sharing it with people. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything in the future. As I said, all these guitars will be included on the newsletter. If you want to find out any more information about them, that's the place to do it. And if you want to find out the rest of the ranges of Taylors and Martins that we've got, go to peachguitars.com. So that's it for today. We will be doing another live in a couple of days' time, hopefully. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Really appreciate the support, as always. I hope you're all taking good care of yourselves. I hope you're all playing loads of guitars. And hopefully you'll be able to add something new to your collection by way of a Martin or a Taylor. That's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.